Welcome to Limitless, the podcast where peak performance meets unstoppable growth. Each week, we explore powerful strategies to elevate your mind, body, and relationships, breaking through barriers and unlocking your potential. Whether you're striving for personal excellence or deeper connection, this is your space for transformation. Just a reminder that this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. It is not intended to diagnose, treat, or cure any mental, health, or medical condition, nor is it a substitute for professional advice. Always consult a licensed healthcare or mental health professional for your own needs. If you are experiencing a mental health crisis, text or call 988, and if you need medical attention, dial 911 from your phone. Now let's get started with living a life without limits.
Hey everybody, it's Rod and Kerry and the Limitless podcast, and we are continuing on the LEAP framework. The LEAP is an acronym, of course, for lead, empower, act, and perform. If you need to know more about that, you can look it up on our website, or you can look at our other podcasts, and you'll be able to learn a little bit more about that. You know, really today, what we're talking about, and Kerry and I have been talking about this for a few weeks now, which is embracing the suck.
Yes.
And I know that has sort of this negative connotation to some people, but you know, if you're a military person or even a Marine or a mountaineer, which, you know, Kerry's a climber and mountaineer, I'm a climber and mountaineer, embracing the suck is just something you get used to. So, you know, you're getting ready to embrace the suck this weekend, right? Is that
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
you're heading
We're
up to
gonna,
Mount Adams again?
yes, I am. Looking forward to that. That's right. Yeah,
I got
be great.
my good buddy Troy's headed up there too. So look for the gaggle of a bunch of young, you know, teenage men and their leaders. So yeah, they go up there every year as well. So yeah,
That's great.
yeah,
Super fun.
yeah.
Awesome. And you've been up there as well.
Yeah, I've been up there a few times. Yeah. So I've been up there when it was amazing. I've been up there when the weather sucked. Yeah. So yeah. So we've
Both
talked about that
experiences.
before. Yeah.
Great.
You know, embracing the suck is, you know, oh my goodness. I remember using that term back in the 80s when I was a Marine. A lot of times people referred to the Marine Corps as the suck. And
Mm-hmm.
so, so it's a military mindset, and I feel like it was rooted in Marine Corps culture. And, you know, it's really about accepting discomfort as a part of growth. So I think we have to get uncomfortable before we can grow again most times. And I know you and I, we've read the same book or been reading the same book and or listening to it, and that's The Comfort Crisis by Michael
Mm-hmm.
Easter. Fantastic book. I know you like it, right?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you feel, you know, you've been, so we've both, you know, read or listened to the book, and it sounds like you've really connected with the book. And this show is not about the book. This podcast isn't about the book, but I think it really truly does a good job of summarizing and encompassing, embracing discomfort again and finding new ways to do that. So how do you feel about, you know, accepting discomfort and growth as, you know, as a climber, mountaineer, I mean, you're very active, you're athletic, you're professional. And so tell me, what you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's really helpful framework because it can really help, I think, shift thinking when, you know, to embrace that. It's a part of life, to see it as something that could be potentially positive. I think we live in, you know, in a day and age, like it talks about in the book, where, you know, comfort is talked about a lot. And if we go back in history, like he does in the book, it shows us that things were different and there probably was a lot less comfort than there is today. And there's just a lot of benefit and growth that can spur out of being not comfortable. But I think a lot of it also has to do with how we think about discomfort as well, like on the name of this topic, embracing it versus maybe avoiding it or running from it. It depends on what we're talking about, but
Yeah, I think so, right? I mean, we all have our own version of discomfort, right? So, you know, whether it's burnout from work or
right.
grief or
Mm-hmm.
our health or
Yep.
For both of us, right? We're both startup entrepreneurs, so starting a new business and all of that is you have to accept that. I think if we try to deceive ourselves that it's all going to be easy, I always say it's all, if we think it's going to be all rainbows and Skittles, we're going to be, sadly proven wrong very
Right.
quickly. So I think
Yeah.
the sooner we can get used to the idea that it's going to be uncomfortable, it's going to be really hard. There's going to be a lot of grinding. There's going to be a lot of late nights, whatever it is. There's going to be a lot of pain and suffering. But it's and maybe the suck is really people don't like that word. I also tell people when I'm working with them about the process is trust the process
Hmm.
and follow the process and walk the process, whatever it is. But it should lead you to a better finish than where you were at, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious, right? You're opening up about the military. How
Yeah,
did it help you as a Marine, that concept? Like, what was the
man.
application? Like, what was the benefit, if you can share about that?
Sure, sure. They try to prepare you for Marine Corps boot camp before you go in, and I don't think, and I believe that I was probably better prepared than most because I had gone into this delayed entry program. So you get to sort of practice being a Marine before you go to boot camp. You go to these weekend drills and things like that, and you're with Marines, and then they're telling you all about boot camp. Hey, do this, don't do that, and they're really helping you. But nobody can prepare you for the shock that you get because it is all rainbows and Skittles. There's trepidation and fear, but until you pull it, for me it was San Diego. You get into the San Diego airport and then you're directed down to this empty part of the terminal where they meet you. And from that moment on, it's they're screaming and cussing at you to get on the bus and sit down and shut up. And so there's this shock
Yeah.
and and they get you there, and the first thing they do is they take everything from you, right? They take your clothes, they take your hair, they take your pride, they take your ego, and we're just all a bunch of naked babies, right? They take everything from you, but we're all the same. And
Mm,
and so from that moment on, I was dependent on others, right? I was
hmm.
depending on the Marines to give me some more clothes,
Yeah.
shoes to wear, food, things like that. But But everything they put you through, what I learned coming out of that, right? Every day we were pushed beyond what we thought our physical and mental limits were. We weren't pushed beyond our physical. They were our own perceived
Hmm.
physical and mental limits. When I didn't think I could run another, 10 steps, I pushed out another mile, or I couldn't, whatever it was, I didn't think I could take more mental abuse, if you will. I could, right? And so you build up this, at least in the Marine Corps, you sort of build up this this skin, this resiliency just from that experience. So I don't know if I'm answering your question or not, but I think I came out of that, and people who know me know as in the Marine Corps, my wife hears me say this all the time, is the thing that I learned in the Marine Corps is not just me, but everybody is capable of way more than they believe themselves or that they tell themselves.
Mm.
And if you're a mountaineer or if you've done a marathon or if you've done an Ironman or whatever it is, there's all these different things that you do, whether they're physical or college.
Yes.
Going into it, you think, I'm only capable of this. And what you find out is, no, I'm capable of this, right? And as I've said before to you and on this podcast, is, it's all tools in the tool belt, right? It's
Hmm.
all tools that I can bring it out and say, I've been here before. I know what this is. So I think that's kind of what, we're talking about today is it's that journey of where we find ourselves. What was the first big mountain you climbed?
Mount Rainier.
Mount Rainier. So you went into it, you were fairly prepared, right?
Hmm.
But was there a point where you went, I don't know if I can do this part? Did you feel,
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. That's
What was it?
part
Do you
of.
remember what it was?
Mm, it was a lot of years ago, but
Was it
it's
just the mere snowfield?
no. Well, just, feeling probably nervous on the day of
Yeah,
the climb. We did training, we prepared, all of that. It is uncertainty. There's a lot of things can't control, like weather.
yeah.
Um, I think, and then you hope that you trained enough when it's your first experience and you haven't done it before.
Yeah.
There's no certainty for sure, right?
Yeah.
A lot
Yeah.
of things that we don't have control over. Some of it we do.
When you're at the base of the Bergschrund and you think you've gone as far as you can, you're like, oh, I've still got another 1,200 feet to go, whatever it is, right? And you're kicking in steps and you think, well, in the back of our mind, right? There's that little voice that says, it's telling you can't do it, but
Right.
you push through anyways.
Yes.
And you're hot and you're thirsty and you're tired and you're sore and the
Right.
big muscles are hurting and yeah. And
Yes.
and you have to put out of your mind that, once I get to the top, I still have to go back down all this, but still, yeah.
Right. And that can be, you got to be careful when you're going down too, because people get tired and there's risk there all the way up and down, right?
They say it's a lot riskier. They say that about Mount Everest, right? A lot of people die on the way down because
Mm.
it's riskier on the way down because you're tired and your guard is down and yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
But
yeah. Today's about really, there's a science to this. There's really science. There's science, based research that proves this theory about, we're, capable of doing more than we
Mhm.
thought. And it's really about, we're going to talk about these mindset tools, these tools that everybody can have in their tool belt. And because when we talk about the LEAP methodology, for those people that are reading about it, hearing about it, or looking at it, so you've got you've created your vision for yourself, this clarity of your vision, and then you've empowered that vision with your plan. You've got this plan in place, and then you start to taking action towards your plan or your goals, and then something gets in your way, something trips you up, you trip yourself up, you fail.
right.
Or it just gets hard, right? It
Yep.
just gets really hard. And it's just knowing that, if you push through, I think it's never as bad as we build things up in our mind to be. I think people do that. I
Yep.
do that.
Yep.
In my mind, oh, this is going to be bad giving this news, or this is going to be really hard. Well, sometimes you just got to block that out and go. Um, and I think that, we're going to talk a little bit about, the movie Touching the Void as well. And folks, if you haven't seen the movie Touching the Void, it's, Joe Simpson's kind of the main character in it. And it's powerful, but it's brutal as well. So, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. So you're kind of talking about lead, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Lead,
yeah.
which is leading with your vision, all right? And everybody has a personal vision and also thinking about your values, right?
Yeah.
When I am doing something hard, sometimes it really helps me to think about this, like what you're saying, my vision and something that's greater than me.
Mm-hmm.
Is of course so helpful. So like when I'm trying to do something maybe physically challenging, I can think about my kids and that I want to model to them mental toughness or
Yeah, yeah.
courage but that actually can really help me because it's greater than me to kind of tap into those places, right? And it's kind of goes along with what you're saying, what with lead, right? And everybody finds that place.
Yeah, something you bring up a lot, and I appreciate this, are always, anchoring what you do to your values. And I think that's really important, right? Because
Yes.
it's that anchor, I think, that will get us through that time of adversity, right?
Hmm.
So if our values if our values, if our family, as you point out, family, our kids, our spouse, what our family is one of our values, or value is just philanthropy, whatever it is,
Yes, our
those,
business team.
yeah, yeah.
What do you think around that in
Well,
terms of
yeah,
business?
for business team is, what are their, we talked about this, I think, in our last podcast is, business teams working together as far as their, um, what's their vision for themselves and what is their, and that should be based on their values. So if they've got a set of team values, or an organization has a set of values, that a lot of times, if you read about a lot of these organizations too that have come through some really tough times, or or a team or a company that has developed something really special, really innovative, very impactful to the world, you know that they have this set of core values that they've adhered to. And that might be, going back to that, might be what has helped them be successful, get through all the hard times.
Yeah, that's so great. There's a podcast by the founder of Athletic Greens. It's a supplement.
Yeah, I know what it is. Yeah.
Yes, I like it. I'm a fan of that. But he talks about his story and
So you're
how
telling me I need to get Athletic Greens, because I will go get them. I've been thinking about it. So,
yeah, I'm a fan of it. My
all right.
family, we like Athletic Greens.
Okay.
We support them.
We are not sponsored by Athletic
No,
Greens, folks, but if Athletic Greens is listening, we would love to be sponsored. Anyways, keep going. I'm just kidding around. Yeah.
right. No, absolutely. But he has the founder has he's been on podcasts, so I've heard him talk about his story a little bit and how he really stayed true to his product, even though it was difficult to do that, to have a high quality product. And he was able, as he stayed true to that, which reminds me of staying aligned with your values, eventually he was able to launch and take off. But hard process. So in some ways that could be like seen as embracing the suck in business, right? Where it can
For
be
sure.
really tough. And sometimes businesses that are really successful, so I hear, they had a story and a lot of hard work underneath all that before they kind of become successful. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I can't think of a single business out there that's still in business that has had any type of success that hasn't experienced the really low points. And
Right.
so there's probably a small percentage that made it through just due to dumb luck, or maybe a lot of them made it through due to dumb luck. But I also think, I think about the company I used to work for, Spiceology, and it was before I went to work for them. Right after they started, and they were really successful early because their product is just flipping amazing. I mean, just unbelievable stuff. But the pandemic hits, and they're a manufacturing firm, and they're selling, and so this was a tough time, and they could have easily just closed down and said, bad timing. And they pivoted to online sales like immediately. They completely retooled and revamped everything
Wow.
almost literally overnight. And it
Way to
wasn't
be
easy.
flexible.
Yeah, and it had to suck. I mean, but that's probably what saved that company during the pandemic, where we know a lot of companies closed for various reasons. So I think a lot of innovative ideas there, but again, there's the honeymoon phase ends for all of us. In everything, relationships and business and mountain climbings, right?
Yep.
It's like
Right.
let's take Mount Adams, right? Okay, so you're headed up Mount Adams, and I've we've talked about this before. My buddy Troy got me to doing this, which is, he said, we always take a photo of the group photo at the beginning, right in front of the trail sign. He says, let's get a photo of everybody's happy right now before we get on the trail, because I guarantee when we get down here, you're all going to hate me. But it's true, is, you're all excited, your energy's high, you're moving fast, you're walking. It's great because you start out on a road, kind of a 2-track trail, and then you go up this road, and that's fun. Then you get on the glacier and you're still excited. But about halfway up, you're kind of, I was hating Troy and hating myself, first time, right? Hating life. It was hot. My nutrition wasn't right. I was dehydrated.
Yeah.
And it started to get steeper, right? So the honeymoon phase ended right after the Crescent Glacier, right? Top of Crescent Glacier, start going up, still okay. But, that's really what happens. And there are a lot of people, they just turn around and go back down, right? It gets hard. The climb gets hard. People want to turn around. And
Yeah.
because they don't know what they're capable of. And that's the main thing, is just you've got to tell yourself you're capable of doing more than what you think. And I don't care whether it's physical, mental, whatever. So,
Yeah. That's so important. Like, become your own best friend.
Yeah.
Talk to yourself with kindness or
Yeah.
cheerleading or whatever, right? To help.
Right. Well, it's
Yeah.
like back to the touching the void story, with Joe, right? Joe, he
Mhm.
falls into the crevasse. Okay, watch the movie, folks, or read the book. The movie is as good as, this is one of those where the movie is as good or better than the book. And he falls into a crevasse, okay? He's alone. He's broken up, injured, and he's down. And his climbing, I don't want to give away the movie. So spoiler alert, though, his climbing partner who cut him loose, watch the movie, find out why, or read the book, find out why, thinks he's already dead. He already thinks he's dead. So Joe falls into the crevasse and he's still alive. And he's in the bottom of this crevasse and there's no rescue. So I may have just sort of quit at that point, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
it's hard. I can't.
I don't know, right?
Right.
But he chooses not to quit. And he chooses to really continue to lead himself. And as you said, be his own best friend, right?
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Mhm.
So I think, I mean, you had your, and you keep, okay, here's a term you keep bringing up. I know you love this term, the crucible. I know you love the
Yeah.
crucible, right? You've asked me about the crucible many times, and I'm so old that in boot camp, the boot camp was the crucible. Boot camp at the end, they have what's called a crucible. It's like this 48-hour period where they just, I mean, and it's impressive to see what they go through and how they feel when they come out of it. But it's really, it's that, we all have a crucible moment. There are
Right.
several of them in our lives, but everybody has a crucible moment where we're tested on who we are, what we are anchored to, what's within us, and how we're going to lead ourselves from within. There's that crucible moment. Now, I know you had one didn't you have a crucible moment on Mount Rainier?
Well, I mean, I think it just, that's the first time I had ever climbed a mountain. So, I mean, I think a lot of it was for me especially near the top when I'm
Yeah,
having
yeah,
some altitude sickness and, all of
yeah.
that made it really hard. So probably near the top was really, really, really difficult. I had to muster a lot of strength to keep going when
Yeah.
fighting the altitude.
We're talking about, we're kind of in the lead part of the
Right.
LEAP framework, right? Leading yourself, and have clarity of vision, right? And something that, well, so my middle son, Zach, he's a professional strongman competitor. He just, he took second at the Rainier Classic, which is one of the biggest, it might be the biggest pro-am, on the West Coast. But,
Wow. Amazing.
blew
Congratulations.
blew it away. I mean, just killed it. But here's something, and I couldn't go there to be with him, but they televised it. And so I'm watching him in the background before he was, there were two events, and I saw him in the background, and you know what he's doing? I got so excited. I had to ask him as soon as I talked to him. He's back there. His back is turned, but he's going through this series of steps and his head's down. So I could tell his eyes are closed or he's at least focused. He was visioning. He was doing the real
Amazing.
visioning. He was visioning as an athlete the event that he was going to do, how he was winning the event in his mind step by
Amazing.
step, right? And I think that's what we're talking about
It's
is
powerful.
leading yourself from within. So if you can envision it, right, then
Yes.
you have a better chance. If you can envision what the end is going to look like for you, what success looks like, you have a much better
Yes.
chance. So that's what we're
Oh,
talking
yeah.
about, right? Yeah,
Such an awesome, incredible example. And congratulations. That's
man.
amazing.
Well, we'll get him on the podcast too, because he's got such a great message and story, and I love how he prepares and trains. His last two contests, he's been in the zone. It's the best I've seen him perform.
Wow.
But the best mentally, he is his own worst enemy, right? Like we all are. I mean, these last two events, I mean, he was so relaxed. I could just tell, right? I've watched him. Known him since he was born. But,
Yes, of
so
course.
anyways, but I think that's, to me, that's a good example of creating a vision for yourself. Definitely embracing the suck, because there's going to be, there's pain, there's agony, there's all this other stuff. But if you have that vision in your head
Yes.
of in your mind of what success and what the end will look like for you, you've got a much better chance of getting there. So,
Right. So important for
yeah.
that. So practicing that.
Right.
visioning your success
Yeah.
story or
Yeah.
or what it looks like and feels like, just like your son was modeling so amazingly.
Well, and I think that, we talk about, and the empower part of things. So for empowering that vision, how are the different ways we can empower that vision and empower ourselves, right? And it's really, when we're in the suck and you're halfway up the mountain or whatever it is you're doing,
Yeah.
you're it's midnight and you still have to finish 5 things in because you're bootstrapping your business. You're a one owner, one employee business, and you're
Yep.
trying to be successful, and you still got 5 things left to do, and you can't leave until it's done. Or you're studying for that final, and it's the last thing you want to do. Usually it's springtime, right? You don't want to be inside in spring. So,
Yep.
but you get into it's so hard. It's really hard. But, this is where I think some mindfulness comes through. I don't know if you can speak to that or not.
Yeah, sure, of course. Well, like
You know,
also mindfulness and self-talk, right?
yeah,
So
right.
bringing yourself into the present moment. Even actually, the man who wrote the book Comfort Crisis would talk about when he was on his really hard out
Oh,
there in Alaska, I believe it was.
yeah.
He talked about and referenced in his book about how you can really just bring yourself into the present moment when they were doing that really hard hike and in a lot of pain, and that helps, right? To focus on your breath, yeah, and to really just kind of be present. And I think from his book reference, it was talking about how that helps you be able to manage that pain better, right? If it's just
Yep.
muscles and you're just needing to go, not injury, but you're just needing to push through something really difficult physically, if it's a hike, a climb, or whatever it is the person is doing. So being mindful is really important.
Carrying out 150 pounds of meat on your back for miles after hiked in there. Carrie's talking about the book, The Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter. Get the
Yeah.
book, read the
Yeah.
book, use that as a reference manual, and then listen to it. I love reading books, the hardcover book, and then listening to it on audio. It really drives it in, drills it into me. But
Yes.
he actually narrates his own book and he's really good at it. But love hearing the stories. But yeah, I mean, I've been through a lot in my life, but every time I listen to parts of his book, I feel very weak and small compared to, the person he portrays in the book. But, but it's really true is it every, back on the mountain, right? You're kicking in steps. Mountaineers
Yep.
will get this. If you're kicking in steps, it's one step at a time.
Hmm.
And you don't want to go too fast, go slow to go fast, but
Yep.
which is, I know that's not the way it's supposed to be said, but really, just one breath at a time, one step at a time. I think you can apply that to any of these situations,
Yes.
So, you
Pressure
know,
breathing, right?
yeah, right.
Yeah. To help
Ooh,
you get
yeah.
the really hard
Yeah, took me a
rest
long time
step.
yeah, the rest step. Yeah, pressure breathing took me a while to get used to learn how to do it, but the the rest step is a metaphor for life. I mean,
Yeah.
it really is. So, yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to explain it a little bit?
We may have talked about it before. I mean, the rest step is just when you're climbing and, whether you have crampons or on, but if you're on a glacier, you've got your crampons on and usually there's steps kicked in ahead of you, but if not, you're kicking in. But the main thing is that what you're doing is instead of just walking up, step after step, going too fast. You're really, as you step and you place your next foot forward, what you're doing is you're just pausing just briefly enough to release the tension on your muscles before you step up again. And what that's doing is taking the stress off your muscles and also the stress off your frame. So, because you're usually carrying something on your back, you've got all this and you're going up. So it's just giving a brief second, if you will, or even a second of time for your body and frame to just rest for a minute. But if you think about it, 1,000 steps is 1,000 feet typically, or something like that. And, if you multiply that by 1,000, now you've given yourself, your body 1,000 little breaks to rest, and
Yeah.
it all adds up. So it's kind of the same thing, I think. So yeah,
Yeah, rest,
yeah,
recovery, and yeah,
yeah, yeah,
that's so. And then as you're doing that, talking about remembering your past wins, right? Accomplishing these things can build confidence. And when I'm curious, when you got done with your Marine boot camp or the
yeah.
Crucible and embracing the suck, how did that impact your confidence? On that note of this being something as a toolkit that empowers us.
The confidence, because I was not a real confident guy going in. I mean, I wasn't a wallflower or a mouse
And
going
you were
in.
young, right?
I was young. I was right 9 days out of high school.
That's young.
But I was a nice guy, and I was, but I wouldn't say I was I was semi, but I wasn't really confident when I came out of when I came out of boot camp. I mean, I was a little too confident when I came out of boot camp, which there's some stories I won't ever share. But a little too, they sort of brainwash you when you're in boot camp. They have to a certain extent. But you ask any Marine, ask 1,000 Marines, and 990 of them are going to tell you that they 40 years, 50 years later, they're still carrying those same things they learned, right? The same values, the same ideas, the same tools, the willpower, the mental toughness and grit that they learned in the Marine Corps. They still carry it, and it still helps them every single day. So, yeah, for sure.
Wow.
And I think there are a lot of different ways to get that experience. You don't have to become a Marine to get that same experience. I just, I was fortunate enough to make that decision for myself. But I think but you pointed to it though, or you talked about it, which is those tools, those mindset tools that
Mm-hmm.
we have. We often forget.
Yes.
Right? We forget
Yes.
that we have that, but but we just take a breath, we just take a moment to breathe and think about, have I been here before? Or this is something new, or this is hard. But that self-talk that you talked about, get your mantra going, right? If your
Mm-hmm.
mantra is, I'm capable, I can do this, I've done this before, I can do it. Then again, that might be just enough to keep you pushing forward. And those are those micro goals, right?
Yes.
I've done this countless times on the mountain, right? I'm like, okay, I just need to get to that next point. That looks like it's about 300 steps or 500 steps. I just need to get there. I just need, 10 steps, right? 100 steps. I think Brooke talked about that too, when she was, I think it was either Aconcagua or one
Mount
of the
Blanc.
multiple,
Mount Blanc.
Mont Blanc, which was,
Mm-hmm.
look, just, you know what? 4 steps. Okay. I did it. Okay, 4 more steps, right? I mean, that's really sometimes all it takes is just get me 4 steps. Okay, I did it. All right, I can do 4 more steps. Sometimes that's all it takes to win. One breath at a time, 4 steps, whatever it is, 1 step. That's all it takes. So,
Yes.
Joe touching the void, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's in this. So he's broken. I think his leg is broken. I mean, he's really broken up. He, by all rights, should have died. He should have died, but he's broken. He can't walk, so he's crawling. So now he's got to crawl out of the bottom of this crevasse. And so he just did it in 20-minute intervals. He says, okay, I'll work 20 minutes and then I'll rest. Then I'll work 20 minutes and then I'll rest.
Wow.
Right? And, he just keeps going. And
With
I think it's,
broken legs and
yeah, yeah. And I know you've heard story after story of business, people that were, real world business failures, or people that, crawled out of the depths of failure into success. And, look at Goggins, Rand. David Goggins is like, he's the guy, and talk about a guy who failed and then succeeded, right? And he figured it out because he just went out there and failed over and over again until he succeeded, and he just kept pushing himself. I mean, I wish I had an ounce of his, mental fortitude. So but he's a good example of, and Goggins is one of those guys, you either love him or you don't, but I love his attitude. And, it's all about, you know what? If you got to crawl, if you have to crawl, then you crawl. If that's
Yeah.
all you can do is crawl, then you crawl. If all you can do is walk, then you walk,
Yeah.
and you just keep going. So, anyways,
Really powerful stories of human, just people's ability to persevere.
yeah,
It's inspiring to think about that.
yeah,
And also how Joe, I mean, yeah, I mean, just can you imagine? I mean, crawling, he broke it down, right?
right.
Even though
Yep.
he's in incredible, immense pain. It's really so inspiring to hear those stories.
Well, and I think we have to rewire our brain too, don't we? I
Yeah.
mean, it's that neuroplasticity you've talked to me about, and maybe you can explain a little bit more to people who are listening about how that works, and maybe how stress and movement can help us rewire our brain.
Well, okay. Um, yeah, it matters. Everybody gets, negative thoughts. I mean, we're human beings, that's normal, but it does matter what we say to ourselves. And so, and we can really be focused, put some effort and focus on, making, like you talked about earlier, a mantra. If you're training for something, it's so helpful to have statements that you say to yourself, that can really help, be your own cheerleader, your own best friend. And that's coming from you. It's not coming from the outside, right? External, but we can provide that for ourselves internally. And the great news is, just like they say in mindfulness, our breath is always there. Well, we can be there for ourselves too. And we can be a kind or a mentally tough, encouraging support to ourselves by really actively choosing that and practicing that. So I think the more we hang out there, think about it, get your mantras, focus on them on a daily basis, it's going to build and strengthen someone's neural network and flood their brain with more of those statements that can help them feel, more confident and build that into. We can do that with intention.
Yeah. I heard something, not to get into mental health, so I'm not going to go there, but the thing about anxiety, right? And I think adults, as we age, we tend to have more opportunities for anxiety, just because, right, the pressures of the world, things like that, and then, and I watch people that are older than me, and they have lots of stress and anxiety. And I think sometimes we make, I don't know if I've talked about this before. I feel like people make contracts with themselves, right? And somebody makes a contract with themselves that, I I am a failure, or I have anxiety. I'll finish the anxiety thing. I think that, I was telling myself, wow, I've got a lot of anxiety. You've got a lot of anxiety. And then I had to stop myself. I read something. I went, oh, wow. Okay. I need to stop doing that. It's okay to acknowledge it, to say, hey, something's making me anxious. So I just all I did was change my self-talk. So instead of saying, man, my anxiety's up, I have anxiety, instead of doing that, just change my self-talk to, all right, something's making me anxious here, and I need to figure out what is it and so instead of focusing on my anxiety, the symptom, I focused on, oh, wait, acknowledge it, give it an identity, right? Oh, something's making me anxious here. Right now, I need to do my box breathing, whatever it is I do. Oh, I was sitting in church. I should not be anxious in church. I was sitting in church, and I was having probably not an anxiety attack, but something. I'm like, oh, whoa. So I did box breathing, and I was fine. Like, 2 minutes later, I'm fine. But it made me think about, instead of saying, man, my anxiety, I just changed my self-talk too. Something's making me anxious. I'll figure out what it is, but I just let me manage it. Let me get it under control. And then let me figure out what is it that was making me anxious. So I think it's the same thing about that. To me, it's about that self-talk, right? Is we make these contracts with ourselves, which, a lot of times we say, the one we hear a lot is, right, I'm not worthy, or I'm not good enough. I'm good enough to take this. I'm not strong enough. I'm not good enough to take on this thing that I need to take on. I'm going to fail, right? So we make
Right.
contracts with ourselves. And I believe, again, not to get into, I'm not asking you to psychoanalyze anything. We'll
Of
stay out of
course.
that. No, but But I think people do that so that that they feel like the letdown won't be as hard, on them when they do fail, right? When they live up to their predisposed notion of failure or whatever it is, right? So it's contracts. So I said we have to make new contracts with ourselves, which is, you know what? I'm going to try it. I may fail, but I may succeed. So I'm going to try it. But it's just, I don't even think people need confidence, right? I just say take action. Just start moving. Right?
Yeah.
Like Lisa told me a long time ago, literally, you just have to start moving and then keep moving. That's all you have to do is start there, right? And
That's
so,
great.
yeah.
That's awesome advice. It's so really powerful. Yeah, no, those are great points. I mean, I mean, it's inspiring because we can shift parts of that, right? And be mindful and aware of when that's starting to happen. One of the kind of on a little bit of what you're talking about, one of the reframes I really like here, talking about earlier is like, if you're doing something physically hard, or you might, get a negative thought like I'm broken, like whatever, where you're talking a lot about doing something physical hard, mountain climbing or whatever the thing is, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Running a business. I'm not broken. I'm being built. So,
Ooh, oh, yeah. Yeah.
powerful because it's how we look at it, like the lens, right? Oh, well, okay, this is an opportunity for growth, or this is, seeing failure as something that is normal and it's part of business, or it's a part of whatever, part of training. And okay, how am I going to show up for myself when that happens?
Wow.
Like, how can
Yeah.
I be there for myself internally, because it's part of life. It's to be expected, right? And there's the
Yeah.
people who talk about failing fast. We've talked about that before. I mean, but when we kind of hang out there and know that this can happen, it's part of life. Nobody really likes it, but if we accept it,
Yeah.
that this can
Yeah.
happen, I think that can be really helpful
Wow.
and less
Yeah.
scary. I
Yeah.
mean, we're talking in general, right? I mean, this is general statements here, but yeah.
That's powerful. That's powerful. First, acknowledging that we're not broken. That's good.
Right. We're just
What and
human
yeah,
people.
right? Yeah. Yeah. And probably acknowledging that everybody has been at that same place before more than once. I don't
Yeah.
know anybody out there that hasn't, been in that wilderness, right? And we've talked about this, but I love this is you made me think about being in the wilderness, right?
Yes.
And sometimes we are thrust into the wilderness. We find ourselves in the wilderness and it was no fault of our own. Something happens to us, right?
Yep.
Death, divorce, relationships, business, finance, whatever it is, something happens that we couldn't see. Now we're in the wilderness, or we put ourselves in the wilderness. We start a new business. We just to do a triathlon, or I'm going to get that decree. I'm going to get that diploma. And
Yep.
I'm going to earn that diploma. We thrust ourselves out there in the middle of this area. And then we get out there and we have that, moment. And we're like, oh, I'm out here. Okay. And it's kind of dark and it's kind of scary. And I feel really alone because even if you can be surrounded by people and still feel alone with your decision to do what you
Yes.
decided to do. Folks, we are at the act part of LEAP. And that's, we had lead, empower, and now we're at act. And we're talking about taking action, taking steps. And sometimes you just putting your foot out there, not knowing what's out in front of you. And sometimes you don't have the confidence that you need, or
Yeah.
you don't have all the light to see where you're stepping, but we just need motion. You just need to take action. And sometimes that's what we're talking about here is just taking action for yourself. You may fall flat on your face, and then you get up and you take another step, or you have to thrust yourself into the unknown. If we go back to Joe Simpson in Touching the Void, he falls into the crevasse, but he knows he can't get out from there. He has to lower himself deeper into the crevasse. He has to go deeper goes back to that burning platform we talked about before. And you and I talked about the burning platform, right? I'll come back to the burning platform, which is, um, uh, you know,
You
it
want to share what
relates.
it is?
Well, no, it relates, but
Mhm.
Joe knows that if he stays in that part of the crevasse, he will die, right? So he, instead of waiting to die, say, okay, well, I'm going to wait to die. I need to go deeper into this void of unknown and figure out a way out of here and keep moving. So I think that that's, that's kind of the metaphor, right? For business pivots and, a personal reboot or relationships, things like that.
You mean going instead up, down? Wait, just
Well,
make sure.
you mean for Joe or
Yeah,
yeah,
Joe.
well, no, he went deeper. He went
Not
deeper.
up.
No, he didn't go up. He went
So towards the
down.
light, he went towards the dark.
He went towards the dark. He couldn't go up, right? He couldn't climb back up. So
So
he,
that in itself, I mean,
yeah,
I'm sure creates a lot of emotion. I mean, instead of going
yeah,
up where you see more light, you are
yeah.
going down darker
I mean,
into the unknown.
what do we? I mean, I don't know a kid that wasn't afraid of the dark, right?
Yeah.
And I think most adults would be unsure of the dark, but sometimes that's embracing the suck. And that's,
Yes.
saying I can't go up to, I'd love to go up towards the light. I can't.
Yeah.
I got to go deeper into the depths and the dark. I have to go
And
yep,
unknown,
in the unknown.
uncertainty.
Yep. And a lot of times though, that leads to clarity and leads to momentum. The whole burning platform deal is there's a story of a guy that a long time ago was on a oil rig, and the oil rig was on fire and burned up, and I don't know if he was the only survivor, but he survived. And they interviewed, and this is a true story. They interviewed him in the hospital, and they're like, how did you survive? What did you do? And he's telling him, he says, look, I was up, the fire, I kept climbing up higher and higher to the platform, the helicopter platform. There were no helicopters coming or wherever he was at. And the fire was burning its way up. And he said, I knew if I stayed there, I had to make a decision because I could leap off the platform into the icy waters of the ocean. It was a long one. If the fall didn't kill me, that long way down, if that didn't kill me, either the sharks would get me or the cold water. I wouldn't last long in the cold water. But he said, I didn't know for sure what would kill me down there, but I knew if I stayed on this platform, I knew death was certain and I would be burned alive. And I didn't want to be burned alive. I didn't want to wait there to die. So I jumped into the ocean and somehow I survived the fall and into the water. I didn't get eaten by sharks and I was rescued before I succumbed to the cold waters and died of exposure or hypothermia or drowned. And he said, I had to do one or the other. There were no other options. So, I knew I would die on the platform. I'd be burned alive. I decided to take my chance. So sometimes you got to take a leap, right? Oh,
Yes.
hey, there you go. You got to take a leap. You got to leap.
Right. That's right. That's so good. And it goes so good with the story of Joe in Touching the Void. Very,
Yeah.
very similar.
Yeah.
Right. And okay. So, like, those are such powerful stories and inspiring, right? To lean into the unknown, lean into uncertainty. There's risk. And even like, sometimes at work or in business or having that hard conversation, gathering the skills to be able
Yep.
to have a hard conversation with someone, but it's also a place where we can be our authentic self. And then utilizing skills like nonviolent communication, classic book, classic skills, so helpful. And being able to lean into those difficult conversations with integrity, with a lot of regulation, care,
Yeah.
and to help prove a work situation or a relationship. Or so those are not the same, but still acting
For sure.
instead of moving away, acting and leaning towards, knowing that there's always risk, but doing it in a way that we feel like we're handling ourselves well, because that's what we can control.
Yeah, I think, pushing ourselves into the unknown, right? And I'm not advocating people just go out there and just, take these leaps of faith. You do your research, do your homework, but
Yeah.
you still have to take a leap of faith. But I I don't think so I've been out there. I've been in the suck multiple times, right? So physically, personally, professionally, I've had these and times where I've put myself in those situations. There's not a single time I can think of where I didn't come out of that with uh, something I learned about myself and the world around me, and a new level of awareness and clarity. So I think that to me is what we're talking about, is really looking at, so you go through it, you're in it. And the thing that I have to remind myself constantly, because when I was young, right, I didn't always think this way. My frontal lobe was still forming probably,
Yep,
but
right, for all of
probably
us.
probably till I was 40. For most people, it's 25 or 30. For me, it was probably 40. But now I always try to stop if I'm in that thing, that zone, whatever it is, that crucible moment. I try to stop myself and say, what's am I supposed to be learning right now? Right?
Yeah, takes a lot of courage.
What's the message that God or the universe or this situation is trying to teach me or tell me? I don't always do it, but I try to stop myself and think about it. What is it? What am I learning from this? So while I'm in it,
Yeah.
but then afterwards, so whenever I've taken people through, a process improvement workshop or a self-improvement workshop or whatever it is, when you're done, and before you go celebrate, right? One of the things you can do, and my book, I don't have it with me right now. I think I showed it to you. I try to take I have this little yellow field book that I take with me on my climbs and my backpacking trips and all that stuff. Because I try to write my notes down, like, what did I learn? Took too much food, didn't take enough food. I don't think I've ever written down, I've never not taken enough food, but whatever it is, equipment, whatever it is, but it's really that reflection times with work teams, with project teams. It's the plus delta, right? The plus
Mhm.
and then the delta, and the plus is what was positive, what were the positive things, what were the good things? And then the delta is like, where could we improve? Where can we go from here? How could we have made it better? Well, I think a person can do that with any experiences.
Yes.
What did I learn from this? Where did I grow? Um,
Right.
what, what did I learn from this? And here's the big one. How have I changed? How have I changed for the better and for the worse, right? Because sometimes things change us not for the better, but acknowledging that. I don't know. How do you feel about that?
I love that. That's so helpful and intentional and thoughtful and creates such an opportunity for growth. It's awesome practice and just increase climbing capacity and abilities and taking it to a relational level. Of course, you know, people who are partnered or married or friendships, um that's a great practice there too. Like what's going well, what could improve, what am I learning? And then that can just help increase growth of any kind of relationship, even if it's a work relationship, because relationships are really, really, really important. And they're
Yeah.
important for us to combat what you were talking about earlier, loneliness. And in the comfort crisis, they talk about the epidemic, of course, of loneliness happening among the individuals in the US, which is really sad, right? Because we know how important relationships are. For us
Yeah.
personally or in the workplace or on a mountain or wherever,
Yeah.
they're really important. They really matter. And there's
Relationships.
ACT that can be a part of ACT, taking
Absolutely.
steps to build your relationships and checking in and seeing how it is and knowing your people, all
Yeah.
that.
I mean, relationships, that there were some times, again, early in my life, that I thought I was where I was at because of me. I got me there and I did it all myself, right? And, obviously I was sorely mistaken. And people are always there for us. Relationships are so important, I recently lost a very close friend and
So
and one
sorry.
of
Yeah.
one of my greatest mentors, right? I mean, I celebrate what the person he was and how big he was, and in terms of just his impact on others. But really, truly, we talked almost daily. This was the guy that, we would just talk about everything, but he was such an important part of, I would share what I'm doing with him and get his feedback, and then he's gone. And I've
Mm.
struggled with that. And it's funny. So I was out just doing some training the other day, and those are the times where I would call and we would just talk while I was hiking, running, walking, whatever it is. I'm like, anyway, I had this very sad moment, right? And then I went, so there's this void, there's this gap. And I'm like, okay, all right, embrace it. He's not there anymore. So get used to that idea. Um, it, celebrate that he was there in my life for so long. But then, and I think this is the important point, is I texted another really close friend of mine that I consider a mentor. And I said, all right, you know what? I said, Dave's no longer in my life, and he was my go-to guy for this kind of stuff. And I said, guess what? You're my new go-to guy for this stuff. And I wasn't quite sure how he would take it. I mean, I was, part of me was like afraid he would say, I don't have time, dude, and I would have understood and accepted that. But what I got back was this overwhelming, are you kidding me? Thank you for asking me. Absolutely. I'm in your corner. I got and I mean, I was just blown away. Not that I expected him to be, but you never know, right? And we're so afraid. People are
Yeah.
so afraid to ask people to be a mentor, to mentor
Yeah.
them, to ask for that person who will be in
Right.
your corner. And I'd say most times, if it's somebody that you think you would ask, you're like, then they're probably going to be willing to help you. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Such a powerful story. Thanks for sharing that. It's just like so powerful. And you took that, you just reached out, and that, I mean, just really encouraging. I think that's very powerful. And you're talking about the power of mentorship and taking a risk, because anytime when we would ask someone to be a mentor, there's risk involved there.
Yeah.
And still leaning towards that acting. It's on the act part. We're on
Yep.
the act part. It
Yeah.
definitely is
Yeah.
like inertia towards taking a risk. And that's
Yeah.
to develop a really important thing, a relationship or a mentorship. It's so
Yep.
important. Everybody needs that. Thanks
Yeah.
for sharing.
Yeah, you bet. I think, it's, and, I think it's just, to me, it's an important message for people to
Yes.
hear. And then, perform really to me is, I think I told you, I was on Mount Spokane and I was listening to the Outlive by Peter Attia, another phenomenal book. We're not
Yeah.
trying to sell books here.
Yeah.
We're both avid readers and stuff. But I was in this state of flow, right? And all I could think about was the P in our Leap, platform, and is perform, right? And to me, it's a state of flow. It's let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
Do we mean perfection? Do we talk? When we say
No, it's not
performance?
even a real thing.
No,
It's not obtainable. Like I don't know one person who's done it. Do you?
I don't know
One
anybody
person's
who's
done it.
achieved perfection.
Anybody?
No.
Like
Mm-mm.
who could do it? I don't know. I've never met them.
That's right. That's right.
I've never, show me who they are, because I don't know.
But it's just making progress, right? To me is perform is when you're in this state of flow and you just feel like you're making progress, right? My running in general, most people can walk as fast as I run, but I was just in this state of flow and I felt good about where I was at the moment. And the reason why is because when I first started, something was wrong with my technology. Like my phone, I wasn't getting a good signal. I couldn't download a book I want, it was all this stuff, right? And I'm kind of warming up I wasn't even running. I was walking and I was like, I think I was a half mile into it. I'm just like, I was like, it was the voice was like, just turn around, go home. This is a fail. Turn around, go home. And I almost did. I'm like, no, I know what it looks like at the top of Mount Kit Carson. I love the view from up there. I'm going to get up there. And so I just kept going, right? But going up the hill, I started to get into my pace and, step after step. And then finally, I was warmed up. My technology was working again, so I could listen to something. But then as I got to the top, then I was running, I was running through, and I'm like, oh, this is it, my state of flow. Anyways, I feel like that, but there was nothing perfect about it. It was just progress and momentum. So isn't that what we're talking about when we say in that level of perform?
Yes, right. I mean, I'm not a fan of perfection. I mean, and you know how people say it's boring. I mean,
Yeah.
and I understand we all kind of have a human tendency to want that, right? Because it feels
Yeah.
like maybe it can protect us.
Yeah.
I've had definitely had those experiences myself too. But thanks for sharing. I think that's also another great point is like there's a lot of bumps along the way and to expect it, right? It's not going to all go smooth sailing. I really like what you're sharing because you're just like, okay, well, there's this problem or this thing that starts to happen, but you keep going. You're pushing through, you're continuing with action, and then it leads to perform. But also you're talking about flow state, right? So in some ways, I don't know, like it's like being our true self, knowing ourselves,
Wow.
like getting
Yeah.
into that place, like who are we? What's our centered place? What helps us feel at our best? Of course, we're not going to always be there. We'll only be there sometimes. But wow, the more everyone out there in the world can do that, the
Mm-hmm.
better, because then it's like, then we get to be us and we don't
Yep.
have to be anybody else.
Yep.
And so I really appreciate what you're sharing
Yeah.
because that's what we hope for everyone, right? To
Yeah.
just keep finding those places where you find what you love, your centered self, so that you can live into that place more.
Yep.
And increases happiness and satisfaction.
Yeah.
And it's hard. I mean, the rhythm of life, right? There's going to
Right.
be peaks
Yep.
and valleys.
Yep.
And being able to go up the peaks and valleys as
Yep.
we're knowing who we are.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's what you're describing is our program, peak performing life, right? So it isn't about perfection. It's about that sustained, output, the peaks and the valleys running through whatever it is, but that whatever that motion is, I love that we know and accept ourselves, who we are, and embrace that first of all, and then aligning whatever it is we're doing with our values, right? Anchoring our values, as you've said before, and then just making progress, right? So if
Yes.
it's, like your marathon training, right? I mean, it's the same thing, right? Yes, folks, Kerry's a big time runner. She's training for marathons, and she sends me her time when she's done, and I will never ever be able to run 20 miles that fast ever. I know I shouldn't say that, um, but what I like though is you're not where you want to be yet. You haven't
Nope.
hit your goal, but
Nope.
you're making progress. You've improved your time, and it's still good. I won't call you
Right.
out in public on it, but it's really good. But it's the same thing is that your motion and
Yes.
there's this thing in front of me that says it's aligned, sustainable output. And that to me is what peak performance is, right? It's not, we call it peak perfection. We call it peak performance, right? And it's just aligned, sustainable output. And,
Can you say more about that? Align sustainable
well, I
output.
mean, like I said, if, you know, uh, like somebody who's trying to get their degree, right? They're going after their bachelor's degree. Are they going after a 4.0? Let's say an adult that goes back, I was one of those. I know several people who are older adults or adults going back to get their degree. They're not going for that 4.0. They're not going for that perfection. And what they're going for is that diploma because that's going to help them get achieve more in their life, right? That diploma is something, it's a point of success. But to me, it's just, it's your that you've got your goal, but the steps you're taking towards that goal are aligned with your values because maybe your goal for that diploma so you can get a better job, so you can help take even better care of your family than you are now, right? So it's aligned. It's not just the diploma. I don't know anybody who's an adult student, right? A non-traditional student who goes to get the diploma just so they can hold that diploma. There's
Right.
something behind it, or it's aligned with all these other things, a better career, a better
Mhm.
life for my family, whatever it is. And so that's what I think is that it's being aligned, it's aligned, sustainable output. So you're just constantly in motion, you're pushing through the hard times, been there, done that, had to take algebra over again as a 40 something year old, 45, 46-year-old
Yeah.
adult.
Yeah.
Hated every minute of it, but mastered it, and then I was fine with it, right? But, oh, man, I wanted to quit so many
Yeah.
times in the first 2, 3 weeks. So it's the same
Yes.
thing, right?
Embracing the suck, right? That's
Yeah,
embracing the suck.
absolutely. And I had a really good person who helped me through it. She's amazing and coached me
Oh,
through. But anyways, but it's one of those things, right? So it's just, and the descent, so you get that. Now you got to come down from the mountain, right?
yep. Right.
You've got to come down from the mountain. I wrote something on this quite a while ago about, coming down from the mountain and what that means. There's the emotional letdown, right?
Yeah. Right. Yep.
All of that, but you got to be careful. It can be as challenging or even more challenging going down the mountain than going up, right? You let your guard down a little bit, you're not watching for little rocks, what I call roller rocks, where you hit those, your ankle goes flopping one way and you go the other, or
Yep.
whatever it is. So sometimes that can be, like I said, just as challenging or even more challenging as the ascent or going up is coming down. And I think we have to remind ourselves that you can't stay up on the peak forever. Nobody
Right.
does, right?
Nope.
As a matter of
Mm-mm.
fact, if you stay up there too long in some of these places, you'll die.
Yeah.
And so we now have to prepare for the way down. We have to prepare ourselves emotionally for the trip down, and we have to prepare ourselves physically and, and be ready for the way down. We know when we get down there, we're going to have to, pack up our stuff and drive home. And I think that we just have to be ready for that and acknowledge it. So, and know ourselves well enough to know that we can make it back down and it's going to be okay. Right. And then we'll find another mountain. We'll go climb another mountain. So,
Right. Oh, that's such a good analogy. It's so great. And just to tie in running really quick. So like
yeah,
as you know, because you've run marathons, that you
10 of them.
are working hard and then you have to recover, work hard, recover. And if you don't recover, right, which the
Yeah.
temptation is to just work hard, work hard, work hard without recovery,
Oh,
high risk for injury, right? So that recovery part is so hard because if you don't take it, just like with mountaineering, you got to get off the peak, you got to go
yeah.
get up
Yeah.
and down. It's really important for our well-being. I mean, it's true for if you're working hard in your job, you need recovery or you burn out. If you're working you work hard in a relationship, well, you need to continue on in the relationship working hard and not just right off the high of getting married. There's much that needs to be done after that, right? So
Yeah.
it's like, I think you may have talked about in that book, Embracing Suck, but the rest rhythm, the rhythm of things going up and down is such an important part of life.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean,
Recovery and,
yeah.
working hard. I mean, they're all and they all matter.
Right. Yeah. How about that? I mean, and it's hard to get away from that. And well, I mean, we're working on a lot of things together, but I'm working on, you know, started one business, then started another business and grinding like crazy. And a lot of it, a lot of it's computer work right now and Zoom meetings and stuff like that. But it's really easy to say, I'll go get some exercise or, whatever when I have time, and then you don't make time, right?
Yes.
And you have to I have to force myself to walk away from it. One of the things I did is I joined that 75 hard challenge, which forces me to go out at night or
Great.
during the day and get away and get exercise, get steps and things like that. But it's so easy to get locked into the importance of what you're doing, right? You just said it, right? Everything's important, right?
Yeah.
And that's true, but if we can't apply our best selves to the situation, then we're probably we're not going to be at our best. And so, yeah, you got the ups and downs, and sometimes you got to stop and take a break and walk away from it. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
recover, right?
yeah, recover. Yeah.
Or show up for yourself, right? It is so easy to, not exercise, not do mindfulness, whatever the goals are that people have to help charge them up. But it's also like we show up for our friends, we
Yep.
can show up for ourselves, and it's easy to
Hydrate and
and what?
hydrate and
Yeah,
hydrate.
drink water.
Drink water. Drink lots of water. It's funny. Number one is I have, my recovery.
Yes.
I have to do a lot more recovery these days than I ever had to before,
Yeah,
physically
me.
and emotionally. Yeah. But water's become very important to me. So,
Yes.
anyways, that's a completely separate thing, but it's okay. I think hydration is relevant in everything we do.
Right. It's part of self-care, drinking
Yeah.
water, right?
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
it's
For sure.
important.
Well,
So important.
why don't we kind of recap what we talked about here? We talked about the LEAP framework,
Hmm.
lead, empower, act, and perform, and the self-talk, the mental tools, right?
Yep.
Some of what those mental tools are the things that you always remind me of, Kerry, which is our self-talk and mindfulness and breath work. And
Hmm.
that's so important no matter what we're doing, whether it's a business challenge, physical challenge, whatever it is. Those things are so important. And
Absolutely.
visualization and goal setting. And how do you feel about goal setting? I mean, what's the one, if you're going to give Kerry of 15 years ago some goal setting advice, what's the one that you would want to impart to her?
Around goal setting. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think, well, just there's many goals, but if I'm going to just think about one set of goals, right?
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
there's many, many categories we could talk about for goal setting. But if I was thinking about me and just on a personal level, I think setting goals around finding out what you love. So this maybe is a more of a self-care hobby thing in that category, finding out what you love and really doing the work around that. And then like go into your goal setting because
Hmm.
because that can be whatever it is you love. Everybody's different. People like chocolate ice cream, strawberry ice cream, but maybe people like running or they like hiking or they like movies so just really knowing what that is, racing that, and then just taking small steps, 1% every day. Just like James Clear says, adds
Yeah.
up to a whole lot. So I think
Yeah.
goals around what people love that help represent their centered self. I'm just focusing on
Yeah.
that.
And those little goals, when we achieve those help us build confidence in ourselves, right?
Yes.
So, and those
Yes.
are celebrate those little wins. They all add up, right?
Yes.
1,000 steps, right? Doesn't, 1,000 steps doesn't sound like a lot, but but each step is a little win. So celebrate them.
Yeah.
And then it's those things, those wins from our past that kind of give us confidence as we move forward, right?
Yep. Absolutely. That's right.
And I think we every time we put ourselves through something, whether it's small or big, we build resilience, right? And
Yes.
I think grit
Yes.
and resilience kind of go together.
Hmm.
And yeah,
And can
recovery.
you say what that is? Resilience, real quick? Is that okay?
Well, I think that, number one is I think resilience today is a very overused term, and I mean it's overused in marketing and a lot of stuff, but resilience is something that's still lacking in our society. And I actually see a resiliency gap in our young people, and then that's distressing to me. But not everybody, but I mean, see it all across the board. So I think what resilience really is, let me get to what my definition is resilience is the ability to bounce back from something. And to me, what grit is related to that is that grit is that internal energy or power that allows you to push through whatever it is you need to push through, to break down that boundary, push through that barrier, and whatever it is. That to me is grit, is just, and grit comes from that internal knowledge that we've been here before, that, or I have the tools, or I have the knowledge, I have the experience, I have the power to make it through this. To me, that's just grit, right?
Yeah.
The grit to grind, but the resilience is the ability to bounce back from, setbacks or failures or whatever it is that, it's, to me, my resiliency a lot of times is I'm too dumb to know better. So I just go for it anyways, right? So, yeah.
Well, I really like that. Thank you for sharing. This is
Yeah.
really powerful definitions.
Yeah. So I
Awesome.
don't know if you, if there's any mindfulness moment you want to do today, and if you're not prepared, that's okay. But if you thought you could,
Yep.
what do you think?
How about, yeah. So I think we talked about so breathing in, of course, using breath is really powerful to focus on our breath, breathing in 4, exhaling out 8. Of course, that can help us relax. But I'm going to use these 2 phrases for self-talk that could be helpful. You can think about that and breathe in deeply. So take a breath in, 1, 2, 3, 4, hold it, and out 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Again, take a deep breath in, focus on your breath, be in the present moment. 1, 2, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And just reflect on these kind of anchoring phrase. Of course, you can make this your own, change it, but you can reflect on that I can accept discomfort. We all experience discomfort. It's just a part of life. It can look like many, many things. That I accept discomfort and I'm anchored in the present moment. Just focus on that. That I can handle discomfort, that I can accept it, and I can be anchored in the present moment, the here and the now. And another phrase that can be helpful, which uses visualization, just visualize being rooted into the ground. You can visualize that your feet are rooted into the ground like trees, grounded. And while a storm of discomfort swirls around us, because we all are going to face storms. If we think about our natural environment, that's just life. Storms serve a purpose in the wild and in nature. So just visualize yourself being rooted. And if you see yourself in a storm or face one, just allow that to swell around you. And again, just focus on your breath, visualize, and also know that you can do more than you think. All right.
What's your current suck?
Yep.
What's that one thing that's just really in your way, that's just not, it's really tough right now? And what's one empowering tool that you'll use this week? And it could be the breath exercise and work that Kerry just took us through. It could just be as easy as that. That's very calming way of handling those things. But what is one empowering tool that you're going to use? Might be something you heard here, might be something that you already use. And then what is one tiny step, one action that you're going to start or take today? Challenge yourself to take that step. You don't have to be ready. You just need to begin. And that discomfort you feel, you're going to feel, that's your signal. That's telling you you've made the step and you're going in the right direction. You've heard how diamonds, are created, with intense pressure, right? And that's really what the next version of you is. You're forging the next version of you. If you need more help, if you reach out to Kerry and I, you can find us at thepeakperforminglife.com. That's our website. We've got lots of information there, lots of blog articles about what we talk about on here. We've got contact information for us, but if you need some help, let us know. If you have questions, reach out. We'd love to hear from you. But really, Kerry, another great talk with you. I appreciate your experience, your knowledge, your insights.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate your knowledge, experience, and insights.
Yeah, it's
awesome.
It is so much fun to do these things, but we have to end it. And so everybody, thanks for listening. And this is the Peak Performing Life and the Limitless podcast with Kerry and Rod. So have a great day.
Yes. Take care.